Well, hello there and welcome everybody to this Pet Sittingology live event. You are joining us live for, again, one of my favorite times of the week. I love hopping on these Google Hangouts and bringing a special guest over to our industry to teach us about what they can teach us about. Today, for so many reasons, I am so excited. We're joined by the Director of Content over at Copyblogger, Mr. Jared Morris. How are you this afternoon, Jared?
I am doing wonderful. How are you, Josh? Thanks for having me here. I'm excited about this.
Absolutely. And everybody watching and joining us and tuning in, it's great to see, as always, some really good familiar names and faces. Please do use that chat box along the way. We'll get to your questions and we'll keep those conversations going. But for now, Jared is the Director of Content over at Copyblogger, and one of the reasons I'm so excited to have him is because Copyblogger itself holds really such a special place in my heart. And I don't mean to sound foo-foo about that, but between you and me, Copyblogger is, in and of itself, responsible for my success. And more specifically, responsible literally for me creating Pet Sittingology and everything it is today. I'll get to the specific story in a bit, but first let me just back up a minute, say hello to you again, Jared, and ask you, if you can, just start us off with a small primer. For those who don't know what Copyblogger is, just give us a quick overview of what it is, and also what is the Director of Content position.
Well, Copyblogger is a group of people that gets excited hearing that story that you just told. Because that's awesome. Like what we do at Copyblogger, we provide tools and training for online content creators, right? But that's kind of the specifics, but what gets us excited is hearing stories like yours, where you talk about how the content, the tools that you found at Copyblogger combined with your own excitement and initiative helped you achieve your goals. And that's what we want to do, is fulfill our role in giving knowledge, providing tools so that people can use the internet to create online businesses that change their lives. It's a lofty goal, but it's one that, since I've joined Copyblogger, I've seen people like you tell your story, and it's awesome. It's wonderful. It gets me excited.
And what I love about all this is, as you said, Copyblogger is a website, a business that offers products and services for online content creators, and really everybody in our industry. That's exactly what we say you need to do, and that's what we do, and everything Jared is going to talk about today. This is what's so important. Well, before I get to this point, Jared, give us a quick impression of how big is Copyblogger? What are your numbers, really, if you can divulge some of those numbers?
Yeah, sure. No, last year we did $7 million in revenue, to give you one number. And so, to put that in perspective, Copyblogger started about 8 years ago just as a one-man blog about copywriting. Brian Clark, bringing old school concepts of copywriting and advertising into a modern day online context, and that has grown into now a software company that's still, our heartbeat is still the blog. That's where we provide the free training, the education, but now we are full service for an online content creator, from themes to e-commerce products to web hosting to SEO products, and now to Rainmaker, which brings everything together as a turnkey solution for anybody who wants to, again, use the internet to build the business that can change their lives.
Yeah, it's really incredible, because everything you're saying, I have 10 additional points that I can point out. So I have to sort of focus myself. So taking it back a minute, $7 million in revenue, obviously big. Brian Clark is your fearless leader, and he's the one that back in the day I came across, and I found Teaching Sells, which is a division of Copyblogger, one of their courses and programs that I took at the right time in my life. I came across it, and basically I didn't have anything outside of my own pet sitting business, so I didn't have Pet Sittingology at the time, but I knew that I wanted to sort of take things a step further, and what Teaching Sells offered at the time was a full on course of how to take your knowledge, in essence, package it, create it, and get it out to the people that you're trying to serve through good content, good marketing, good creation, etc. So that's literally what during that course is how and when I created Pet Sittingology. And to this day, if everybody on board watching, if you have not visited Copyblogger, when the time is right, now or later after the show, head on over to copyblogger.com and you will see what I mean. I today always think, what would Copyblogger do? Because what we're going to be talking about today, everything Jared does through Copyblogger to succeed to that level is what we, on a little bit of a smaller scale, as pet professionals are able to do as well. They practice what they preach. So everything we're going to be talking about is what they do on a daily basis. So we're going to learn that, and we're going to take that, and we're going to discover how to become the authority in your niche, in your area, in your community, how to create the right content. We're going to talk about the difference between a blog post article and a non-blog post, like your other pages, like your about page and your services page and your fees pages. There's a difference in approach between those two, and we're going to go through the goals of all these pages and how to get your audience to your pages and how to get them through your pages taking action and hiring you as their pet care professional. So, Jared, with that, what exactly is your role day to day as director of content?
Basically, I manage the blog. So again, the blog is where everything started. It's where we provide all of our free online education, and in my role right now, I manage that. So from editing the articles that come in, managing the calendar, corralling all the guest writers, understanding the editorial direction that we want to go. That has been my main duty. And now some of that is shifting up a little bit, and I'm taking on some more responsibility for data analysis and some of what we're doing for email, which I'm really, really excited about. But for the most part, it's managing that content that goes out and making sure that every single day there is a free piece of content that is useful for people like you, people like me. Because like you said, the sizes of our organizations are going to change, but at the end of the day, we're all just trying to reach an audience, and get our audience to know us, like us, trust us, and maybe someday buy from us. And so there's so many similarities there. It just depends on kind of what stage that you're at.
Right, and also what excites me is you are going to be joining us as one of our keynote speakers in Las Vegas this October. PetSittingLive.com for everybody watching who is not on board with tickets. Jared's going to be there. He's going to be speaking about not only blogging and content creation, but all the good stuff we're going to cover today in further detail and then some. So more on that as we progress. So give us a quick insight into how you got to this point, because I want to reiterate that everything we're talking about today, Jared's journey and what he does and how he got there, is exactly what we could and should be doing to succeed on the level that we want to succeed on. Whether it's $7 million in revenue or a little less, it doesn't matter. The journey's still the same. The actions are still the same. The fundamentals and technique is still the same. So what were you doing a year or two prior to getting on board in this role with Copyblogger?
It's funny that you asked that, because I never would have anticipated that I would be in the position where I'm at now, and I'm so fortunate to be here in a position that I love with a company that I love, and to get to work with people I respect so much. But a couple years before Copyblogger, I was managing a sports blog, in addition to working, co-managing a social media marketing and SEO agency here in Dallas. But Midwest Sports Fans was the sports blog, which I had launched simply as kind of a sandbox, because when I joined up with my business partner at the time, I had no experience in any of this stuff. I didn't even really know what WordPress was. And so this was my little sandbox area to play in. And fortunately, I enjoyed writing and creating content. And so that was never a hard part. And so just by putting out content every single day and just kind of throwing caution to the wind and trying out different stuff from SEO to social media, the site grew steadily and gained traffic and gained something of a following and was able to generate some revenue. And because of the traffic that came in, we actually started having hosting problems because there were too many people trying to get on the site and our commodity hosting wasn't working. And so fortunately, my business partner was smarter at technical stuff than I was and figured out our own kind of custom hosting solution for the site. And once we did that, we thought, we might be onto something here. Maybe some other sites can use this. And so we actually started a little business around this hosting company. And to make a long story short, at that time, Copyblogger was looking for its own hosting platform to offer to its audience, because that's a big problem in the WordPress space, especially for high-performance sites, is getting good hosting. And so, after working with them some, we eventually came over full-time, and I was able to move from the support desk for Synthesis with Copyblogger. They realized that, I could write a little bit, and that's really where my passion lay. And they gave me the opportunity to go into the editorial side, and that's kind of where the journey with Copyblogger started. And I've just tried to work as hard as I can and soak up as much information as possible. And they entrusted me with the director of content role at the beginning of this year, and so I've just tried to do as good a job as possible with that, because for people like me, for people like you, I mean, Copyblogger is one of the icons, when it comes to content marketing and copywriting, and so. Definitely a responsibility I don't take lightly, and I appreciate any opportunity like this to talk to people, and I can't wait to be there in October to speak to everybody at the conference too. It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, that's really going to be exciting in and of itself. What were you telling me about your journey from this writer of a sports blog that had a problem we should all have a problem with, is too much traffic, and how do we handle it? What were you telling me about having the passion and showing up every day as just two pieces of this big puzzle that sort of made all the difference for you?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like a chicken with my head cut off, just running around putting content out there. I did not read Copyblogger. Like, I did not know about Copyblogger until we came over with Synthesis. I wasn't in that world really. I was more on a sports side, on a journalism side. I wasn't interested in writing online copy and writing stuff that converted. And so I didn't really have a game plan other than I wanted to drive as much traffic today as I could, because all the revenue I was making was based off of display ads. And so my goal was just get up, try and drive as much traffic today, and then do it again tomorrow. There wasn't a bigger picture, a plan in place to build an audience, right? I wasn't doing email marketing. I wasn't really capturing people. It was just try and get as many people from social media and SEO and get big links from big sites. That was it. And so, I look back on it now, and I think how foolish I was, and all these opportunities I wasted to build an audience. But so the point is, those are all the things I didn't have. What I did have was I was passionate, and that came out in the content, which is why people did read it, and I showed up every day and put content out every single day, 3 and 4 posts. And when you do that, you can overcome a whole lot of deficiencies. And then when you start adding all these other tools in your tool belt, and they're really simple, because none of this is brain surgery, and people have been there and done it before, and this is what we like to share with people, is just these lessons we've learned from others. Then, I mean, you have all the power in the world, and so I wish I knew then what I know now, but I guess that was my journey, and we all have our own journey, so,
Right, and let me reiterate for everybody watching right now what you said. Jared today is in a very, very good position. The director of content over at Copyblogger is a good position, but look what he said where he came from. He didn't, he's not... he doesn't have superpowers, so to speak, right? He said when he came from this Midwest sports blog that he was writing, he literally had no idea what he's doing. Pet professionals, how many times do we hear that? Do I hear that? Oh my God, I don't know what to write about. I'm not good. I don't hold a degree. I have no certification. I don't have training. I don't know what to write about. You think Jared did? Of course not. But this got him to where he needed to be. And it can and should get you where you need to be. Put all of your preconceived notions and misconceptions aside and simply write. Simply show up. We all have the passion. That's why you're in this profession. We love pets. We love running our business. We love doing what we do. We are passionate. Just take that passion, extend it one little step further into your writing, into your blog, into your articles, into your content. Call it what you will. Just extend it into giving your audience, giving your industry, your pet community, giving them the tools to enjoy their stuff more. Provide them with the resources, with the insight, with the tools, with the strategies, with the techniques that you already have up here and in here. Show up every day and do it.
Absolutely. I couldn't say that better myself. I'm motivated now.
Yeah. So you do this, you show up, you had no idea what you were doing, yet it worked. Let me ask you this, Jared. I hear this question quite a bit from pet professionals, and I want to know how you answer it. Because I always say you have to write, you have to get content out there. Google wants it because your audience wants it, and that's the circle. And your audience wants it, therefore Google's going to show your pages in the results more often than if you did not have it. How do you answer the question if somebody asks you, Jared, if you say, you know what, you just have to show up, you have to create the content, you have to write. Then somebody says, does it matter if nobody reads what I write?
Well, sure, it matters. I think when we put content out there online, we're putting it out there for an audience. And I think the first place that you start with any piece of content is an audience. And so you're writing, you're creating with the intention that this piece of content will be read. Now, is it okay when you're starting out if pieces aren't read because you don't have an audience yet? Absolutely, that's going to happen. You know, I mean, the first few posts I put out at Midwest Sports Fans, you know, the only people who read it were my mom, my dad, and my friends that I sent the links to, and they've, you know, I don't even know if they read it. So that's, everybody has to start somewhere, right? And the nice thing is, just because you put a post out at first and it's back in the back of your archive, you can repurpose it and bring it back later if no one saw it. But you know, so you have an audience in mind, and you gradually then grow that audience, and you learn by doing. So you put a piece of content out, you see what the response is, you gauge the response, note that, move on to the next one. And what's nice is it starts to build on itself. It's a snowball. So you may not get much of a response at first, and you're going just off of intuition, whatever market research you've done, just you're kind of guessing at what your potential audience is going to want to read. And eventually you do get people who read it, you know, and whether that's finding your audience in social media or finding them in forums, you know, wherever you go to find those people, and you have to hustle a little bit at the beginning. Really, you have to hustle all the time, but especially at the beginning. And then with each piece of content, then as you grow, you get more information, more of a response, and that then educates you for the next piece of content, and you just get better, and you naturally understand your audience better, your content gets better. And that's where the showing up is important. And that's where the passion is so important, because if you don't have that, when you face those initial challenges, it can be easy to question, and is what I'm doing going to work? Should I really do this the next day? Is it going to work? Yes. It's been proven over and over in every industry. Content marketing works. So you don't need to worry about that. It will work. You just have to bring that passion and that stick-to-itiveness to show up, and then just be willing to learn. You know, so take note of how people are responding and let that inform your future decisions.
Yeah, and we're talking about building content, building an audience, growing your business through authority. Mm-hmm. Now, I specifically say that word because this past May, Copyblogger had, surprisingly enough, its first ever live event or conference, and It was authority intensive out in Denver, which my goodness would I have loved to have been there. I heard it was an incredible success. You, I know, were one of the speakers. Seth Godin was one of the speakers. I mean, there's a long list of one of the speakers. I bring this up because authority is sort of like a trademarked word. I imagine you guys are inching towards, but you've really taken that word to mean something. And I read in one of your recent articles, you wrote that to build a business, you need an audience, and you can't build an audience without authority. So how do you begin to approach that?
You know, I look at it in terms of when people come to your website, you have visitors, you have readers, and then you have an audience. You know, when someone comes to your site for the first time, they're a visitor. And so they're, for whatever reason, maybe they found your link in a search engine or they clicked over from social media, and they're here at your site. And this is your opportunity now to educate them in some way, to give them something of value. And
Correct.
So, you know, so they're looking at this page wherever they are, and you want to turn this visitor into a reader, which means that instead of them just looking at your headline and bouncing because they don't find anything of value, they're reading and they're going down to the bottom of the article. Maybe they're clicking on a related article, or they're commenting, or they're bookmarking. They're now a reader. They've consumed your content. But the next step then is not just to let that reader go and never see them again, it's to turn them into an audience member, someone who subscribes, someone who commits to consume your content consistently. And to do that, you have to have authority. You have to demonstrate authority. And what that means is, you know, we all want people to know, like, and trust us, right? That's how we're eventually going to get people to subscribe to maybe buy from us. And being an authority, demonstrating authority, goes to the next level beyond know, like, and trust, because you've demonstrated that you can do what you're going to teach, right? You have wisdom, but you also have the knowledge that you can break it down to people into component parts and teach them the information, the skills that they need to then go do it themselves. And that to us as authority is, you know, Copyblogger, we always, you know, like you talked about with teaching sales, you know, we like to basically teach by doing. And I think a lot of our authority comes from the fact that, you know, you buy teaching sales and you recommend teaching sales because you look at what Copyblogger does. We basically just do what teaching sales teaches.
Exactly. I'm sorry. I just have to say, I always said that teaching sales / Copyblogger is the format that in and of itself that you were teaching me to do. So all I had to do was absorb it, take a step back, see what you're doing, how you're doing it, and do it.
Yeah. And that's authority. It's that next level of trust, you know, to where you've demonstrated it and people really buy into it. Because if people are on your site consuming your content, you know, they have a problem of some kind. They're looking for an answer. And you want them to see you as the person who is going to provide that answer, as, you know, the mentor on whatever journey they're going to go on. And authority is the way that you do that. It's the way that you kind of build that sticky trust, right, to where they trust you and they're going to keep coming back. And when they have a question, they are coming to you for the answer because they trust the direction that you're going to point them in.
Wow, you just spoke so much. Again, my head is in 10 different directions. So let me take a step back and reiterate for our listeners and watchers what you said. You said no matter how somebody arrives on your site, whether it's a link via social media or from a search engine search and they land on one of your pages or one of your blog articles, at that point they're a visitor. And then the goal is to turn them into a reader by reading your article or reading your list of services or reading your about page or reading your home page. They're a reader. But now it doesn't stop there because they haven't committed themselves to engage further with you or hire you or contact you. So they go from visitor to reader. Now we want them to turn into audience, which I'm guessing, Jared, signifies that they will be a recurring visitor in a sense, right? Is that sort of the definition of audience? Like how do we know when somebody's part of the audience?
Yeah, I define it as, because I like alliteration, as someone who commits to consume your content consistently.
See. Yeah, I like it too.
You know, so whether that's subscribing via email or however it is, it's someone who's been there and they're coming back. You know, that's where I look at what I did at Midwest Sports Fans is get a whole lot of readers, a lot of visitors and readers. I never took it to the next step. And here's the thing to remember about that is an audience is an asset, right? Like visitors and readers, that's nice to have, but an audience is literally an asset. And Brian has talked about it many times as it's an unfair business advantage. because there's so much that you can do with an audience that trusts you and that commits to consuming what you're putting out there, and it gives you power. It gives you long-term power
Wow.
that allows you to build your business.
Yeah, guys, again, Jared's going to be with us in Vegas talking about this stuff 10 times further. Of course, we don't have the time here and now, but in Vegas, we're going to break down how more, and again, we're continuing this conversation, but I'm just getting almost a little ahead of myself, that in Vegas, he's going to bring us through the tangible of how to guide them down your page and how to formulate the perfect headlines and sub-headlines and when and how to use bullet points and how to navigate through your page. It's all very amazing. So we're going to have notebooks, we're going to have pens and papers, and we're just going to do this together because it's a specific action that can take your visitor through that journey. And to go back to those 4 C's, an audience, I just love that concept. A visitor and a reader almost implies the people who just pass through and go on their way, nod in agreement, perhaps enjoy what they saw, but really don't commit to us any further as an ongoing fan or somebody who actually calls us and wants to hire and work with us. An audience is sort of the first goal. How do you bring them from that search result click to an audience? And the 4 C's were what? Convert, consistency. How did you say it?
It's people who have committed to consume your content consistently.
I love that. People who have committed to consume your content consistently. I mean, that's a great thing to just go forward with. So once we have them as an audience and we want them engaged and subscribed, is the next logical thing that they would in fact give us a call because they've gotten to that point and they want to work with us now?
That's what you want. Now, again, where you go there is now going to depend on your business model. I think where everybody is the same is getting to that audience. You want that audience, and now it's going to depend. So what do you eventually want people to do? Do you want them to call you? Is there a product that you're going to sell? So whatever your conversion is, when you have that audience member, now it makes it so much easier for you to get to that next point. And so we talk about it a lot at Copyblogger, kind of like the circles of trust, and so you've got, or circles of belief and circles of trust. Isn't that Meet the Parents, I think? But circles of belief. So you've got, social media, people who follow you on social media, they're out here. It's very far extended, and you want to take that person and then inch them forward. Someone who's read your blog, and then inch them forward. Someone who's subscribed to your blog, and now get them into that next step. Someone who has purchased, and then that next step. Someone, or a recurring customer. So you're always trying to move people closer and closer into that more internal, more intimate circle of belief.
Do you believe that we as pet professionals should collect email addresses and stay in contact? Is that valuable to our industry?
I believe everybody who is building any type of business or really doing anything online should collect email addresses. Yes, as long as in return you are willing to give people something of value for the email address. So you don't just want to hoard it and not do anything with it. You want to have a strategy, for why am I doing this, right? So what's kind of the end game? What are my eventual goals? But then also, what of value can I bring these people? So I'm getting their email address now. What am I going to deliver to them? And whether that's just useful content, whatever it is, you want to have those 2 things in mind. But yes, do not underestimate the power of email and start it as soon as possible, because there is more power in that list if the people know you, like you, trust you, and read your content than anything else that you can build.
And these could be a list of course, these are people who have opted in, meaning these are people who have said, yes, here is my email, you have permission to send me stuff. Do you think that for our industry, for pet professionals, pet sitters, dog walkers, groomers, trainers, whatever it is, you think this can and should be a mix of current clients and potential clients?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, I want to retract something I said. I don't know that you necessarily have to have your end game in mind before you want to start with email marketing, because even on one of my personal sites, I'm building an email list, and I don't necessarily know what business result it may have, but I just know that I'm building an intimate touch point with all of these readers. And so, yes, in the pet sitting industry specifically, you got to think about it that, if someone's just subscribed to your RSS feed, okay, that's an intimate touch point. But when you are in their inbox, and not just being in their inbox, but in their inbox to where they're paying attention, because you've delivered value, and they see that email come in, they say, yes, I've gotten value from, I know this address, I've gotten value, I want to read this. Man, you have so much power. And so that's what you want, is to get people to opt in and be excited about opting in and be looking forward to what you give them, because you're giving them something good.
And going back to a person starts out as a visitor, and then they become a reader, and then our goal is to turn them into an audience and subscriber and fan and eventually a client, happy client for life. Is the process of the email, do we begin that at the visitor level? Like, is that too soon, or is that when it should begin?
That's a great question. I do think it's too soon. And so, for example, at Copyblogger, you will never see pop-up email subscription. Now, a lot of people do this, and the numbers, I think, just in terms of conversion numbers, show that it's more successful. I don't like it. We don't like it, because especially if that's the person's first visit to your site, the first touch point, I mean, they may give you their email address, but they're not doing it with any kind of intention. They're not doing it with any kind of belief yet. They haven't consumed any of your content. And so, number one, I think you're going to turn a lot of people off doing that. And number two, if they do subscribe, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, if I give you if I just see someone on the street and they say, give me your email address, okay, here it is. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of curiosity, but there's no trust, there's no authority built there. And so I think you always want to have your email subscription, your sign-in form, available for people on the site. So, but kind of standing back a little bit. So whether it's in your sidebar or at the bottom of your post after they've consumed the content, right? So it's available, but I don't like shoving it in people's face right at that visitor level, right when they first come. I think it's better to do it after you've given them some kind of value, then remind them, hey, here's the way to get more value. Now they're going to subscribe with intention. Now they're going to be looking forward to your emails when they come in, and that's what's important. Because we all know in our inbox, we get so much stuff that when something annoys us or we don't necessarily know what it is, or we're very easy to just get rid of stuff. You want people looking forward to what you're going to be giving them, which means they need to have been given something good before to know what they're going to be looking forward to.
That's right. And for everybody on board here and now, if and when you want more of what Jared does personally through Copyblogger, head on over to copyblogger.com, click on one of his articles, look at his author page, which is basically the collection of all of the articles on Copyblogger Jared himself has written. You will also come across, Jared is the host of Copyblogger's podcast called The Lead, and I listen to it every chance I get to and from the office. It's short. It's like 15, 20 minutes, which I think is, obviously it's deliberate, and I think it's phenomenal. So if you want copywriting tips and tricks and strategies and techniques and stories and just all this great stuff, just wanted to get that little note in as as a side note, because what we're talking about here is very small in relation to, I mean, Jared has tons and tons of articles and free giveaways on all of this. So if any of this is ringing true, head on over to Copyblogger, check out, and then I'm telling you, make sure you have a little bit of time carved out when you do, because you will get lost there. The site offers so much free, quality, incredible stuff that, like I said, I always think if I have a question about how to deliver something or how I should prepare something or offer something, I always head on over to that site and I say, well, how are they doing it? How are they literally serving their audience? Because I like what they do and they're doing it right. So why can't I mimic part of what they're doing? I had an acting teacher growing up who said, it's okay to steal, but make sure to steal from the best.
Mhm.
And really, what she was talking about was not stealing in any bad way, because everybody in every industry, in every walk of life, steals. That just means that we observe what somebody's using or doing or offering, and we sort of make it our own. So figure out how you can use some of the things successful sites and people are doing and steal it, use it, but make it your own, of course. So that's what I do. I steal all the time from Copyblogger, meaning I look at what they do and I figure out how I can position it through myself and offer it to my audience in a very similar way, because I think, well, if they're doing it, it's got to work. So let me figure out how to make this my own and offer it a very similar way, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and much of what is on Copyblogger is quote unquote stolen. You know, I think where you have value as a content creator is in your ability to, take information and ideas and knowledge and curate them for your audience. So I mean, what Brian was doing with Copyblogger in the beginning and even still today is not inventing the new language of how to talk to people online. It was basically taking age-old concepts as far back as Aristotle for how to construct a persuasive argument, and David Ogilvy how to write a headline. Just age-old concepts that have proven time and time again, industry after industry. No matter what changes, these fundamentals of how to communicate to people stay the same, and that's all we're doing is communicating to people. And there's different ways to do it with different mediums, but once you learn the fundamentals, it really simplifies and demystifies what's going on online. It's not some secret black magic sauce. It's the fundamentals of how to communicate to people applied to your audience. That's it.
Yeah, and I love that you said that Brian Clark, the founder of Copyblogger, he's not reinventing the wheel. He's not inventing a new language called copywriting or copywriting for the 21st century. He's literally taking what has been at the root of copywriting, which is communication, which is good storytelling, and making it edible, in a sense, for today's audience. That's all it is. And again, I want to go back to something I started this whole thing with saying. Everything that Jared does with his site is the same that we should be doing on the same scale for our site. Our end goal is exactly the same. And going back to their conference this past May, Authority Intensive, Jared, I also read that you guys sold 400 plus tickets months. You sold them out months before the event even took place. And you attribute that to everything we are talking about here, right? So to put it in pet professional lingo, how would you like to be sold out months in advance? How would you like to have your clients on board booking you months in advance? It's possible, right? Just follow this lead, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yes, it's possible with patience and this idea of playing the long game. You talk about how we sold out Authority Intensive months in advance, and people were surprised by that when we were talking about it at the conference, and someone asked me, how did we do it? And it's like, well, we had a pretty basic email marketing strategy. And so it sounds simple, but then you think, but wait a minute. With the audience that we've spent 8 years building with all these solid fundamentals. So it's one of those things. It's a difference between simple and easy. Everything that we talk about and all these strategies are very simple. Once you actually break them down and start learning them, you're kind of like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's simple. The difficult part, what's not easy, is, again, that part of showing up every day and going out there and doing it, and then just putting in the legwork to do the research. I remember when I first joined Copyblogger, I had kind of a complex because I was so in awe of Damien and Robert and Sonia and Brian, because they're so good at what they do. They're so good at articulating ideas. It's not kind of where I came from. And I guess, I had this thought in my head, and I think a lot of us do this with people maybe that are smarter than us or more experienced than us or more accomplished in industry. We look at it, man, they must just be brilliant. Like they can just sit in a chair and conjure up these great ideas. And then I finally realized the secret behind all of their success, which is a very simple one, which is they read a lot. And that sounds simple. It's something I wasn't really doing. And since I've committed to just reading more, it's amazing how much smarter you get and how much people start complimenting you on your ability to explain ideas. It's like, well, I'm just reading and synthesizing from these different sources that I'm reading. That's all Copyblogger is, is a site with smart, dedicated people who have read and are now curating those ideas for an audience. And so whatever your audience is, and it is very important to know your audience, that you can never overstate the importance of that. And then once you understand your audience, what problems they face, what their worldview is, you can take this information that you're learning and then just translate it to fit their worldview and to solve their problems. And you're the mediator between what's over here and them to help them solve a problem and make their lives better.
You are literally not only reading my mind, but reading my paper, because I just wrote down know your audience. And I want to talk about that in a second, but I want to reiterate something you brought up, simple versus easy. And I love how it just ties into all you have to do is show up every day, put in a little bit of work, and you will be miles ahead of the competition. Something that I discovered when I first began my pet sitting business was just that in order to be better than the next, better than your competition, you only have to be this much better. You don't have to reinvent and go miles and miles. Just show up, do the work. Why? Because so many others are not even doing the basics, right? They're just not.
Yeah, and show people that you care. I think that's the other layer that sometimes gets mixed. And I think, if there's any type of genius in any of this online marketing stuff, where I see it coming in is not the knowledge, it's showing people that you care. Like Darren Rouse, he was one of the keynote speakers at Authority Intensive.
ProBlogger. Yes, go ahead. ProBlogger.net.
Really a pioneer, has done so many different things. This was my first time, meeting him, seeing him. And his presentation was fantastic, great information, but what left the biggest impression on me was, as the keynote speaker, he sat in every single presentation, sat through them, was taking notes, and it just, that humility, that willingness to engage with the conference and be there, that's why he has been so successful. Yeah, he's learned all this stuff, and he's good at distilling the information, but he builds an audience and builds trust and builds authority and has people rally around him because he cares about his audience. And so, and I think that's where, especially, to kind of bring this into pet sitters, I am a person who is in the target audience for pet sitters. I have a dog, and I am going to be starting to travel a lot for work. And so I am fortunate that my parents live in town to where I can drop him off at my parents' house when I'm gone. But what if I wasn't? There is all kinds of content that could be created for me. How to prepare your pet for when you're gone. Whatever it's, have an old dirty shirt that you can leave, and all the different tips that you can do, right? And what should you look for in a pet sitter if I needed to hire one? There's so much content, and so for you, if you get to know somebody like me, you kind of figure out what are my anxieties when I leave my dog. He's had knee surgeries, and he's really jumpy when people touch him. How do I go about explaining that to the person? There are just so many different pieces of content when you start to talk to your audience and figure out the problems they face, because I'm sure those are problems a lot of different people face. And so I think that's where a lot of people miss out, is they get the information, they can even write good, technically good copy, but it may not have that extra layer of just caring. Care enough to ask, care enough to find out these specific things about individual people, because chances are they can be extrapolated into generalities about an audience that then lead you down the path of creating that good, consistent content that is going to have the impact.
Yeah, and let me reiterate something that we touched upon in one of our recently past hangouts with Ryan Hanley. I referenced a blog article that I wrote that tells you to simply keep an eye on your emails, meaning every email submission that comes in is a huge opportunity to not only get to know and understand your audience, but to use that and push it out there. So for example, in this blog article I wrote, I came across this because it hit me over the head one day, and then I went back to some of our pet sitting business email submissions, and I saw it all over the place. And I gave 3 examples of how these pet parents are giving us the articles to write. For example, one of them said, I'm having company, I'm having visitors next week, and my brother-in-law is allergic to my cat, so I need somewhere for my cat. That's an article about focusing. So can you imagine if I was that person and I'm looking for someone to hold and care for my cat in their home while I'm away because somebody's allergic? Can you imagine how blown away I would feel if there was an article that addressed exactly that? That would be unbelievable. So in Jared's case, apparently your miniature pincer Rebel, right? That's the name, Rebel?
Yes.
Love it. Rebel had knee surgery. That's what you were saying?
Uh-huh.
So perhaps in your email submission to a local pet sitter, you may write that. So that should be a tool for that person or somebody else listening to say, oh, I understand that need and that concern. I have a few specific things that I do for either small, under 10 or 15 pound dogs, or small pets that have had little knee surgeries, and I get it. I have compassion. I've been there. So what is that doing? If I'm going to sit up and say, wait a minute, honey, come here a second. Look, this pet sitter knows our exact situation before we even made contact. So most of the battle is already won.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing to remember too, that piece of content that you're talking about right now, it may not be applicable to everybody in your audience, but that's okay. You don't have to talk to every single person in your audience with every piece of content. You know, there are going to be niches within niches. And so, you know, that piece of content that's good for you and that portion of the audience, and you put out different pieces of content like that, because that, again, like here's the thing that piece of content did. It didn't just touch you up here. Like, there's a little bit of an emotional reaction there because you're like, wow, like that person gets me. Like, they understand my problem. That's the connection. And now that's what takes you from reader to audience member is that emotional connection. And
see how we tied that in, reader to audience member. It's all tying in that journey. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's not, you know, there's no magic to it. It's just, you know, someone caring enough to empathize with the audience and then figure out what content is really going to solve that problem. And I do want to make one note here when we talk about, you know, email, which is, you know, one thing that kind of stinks about the success of Copyblogger is when people subscribe to our email list, you know, we have too many people to reach out and touch those people individually. it's not possible, you know, because so many people have subscribed. You know, I'm starting a site right now, my side project, that whenever I see that subscription come in, there's no autoresponder. I'm going and replying personally to that person. And if it's a friend, someone I know, it's a chance to reconnect. If it's someone I don't know, it's a chance to thank them, number one, because they've given me something of value, and we should always thank people when they give us something of value. And number two, it's a chance to find out, you know, how did they find out about the site? What was the impetus for them subscribing? Get a dialogue to get to know that person. And so, you know, you can look at, you know, starting small or not having a big audience as a burden. I see it as this great opportunity because you don't have 800 people subscribing a day where you can't possibly keep up with it. If the business is important enough to you to succeed, then it's important enough to you, and someone gives you their email address, reach out to them. You know, say hi, create that personal connection, because most people don't do that. And that's what will set you apart. And I guarantee you'll get some kind of article idea from that, make that connection. It'll deepen it for the next time now you're in their inbox, because you're not just the site they subscribe to. You're, you know, Joshua who sent them an email. You're Jared who now they've had an exchange with. It makes all the difference in the world. And that's, you know, you turn your weakness into a strength. So, you know, you're starting out small, but it's a huge opportunity to get to know the actual people who may one day be your customers.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I could tell you that everybody watching here today already has the care, already has the compassion for what they do and the audience and community they serve. So speaking of knowing your audience, how do you suggest we begin down that path? How do we get to know our audience?
You know, I think the first thing, it's a really timely question, because there's going to be Damien has an article coming out not Monday but next Monday, and it takes you through what's called an empathy map. and basically how you put yourself into the shoes of your customer. And it's a really detailed step-by-step useful post, like here's how to do it. But in general, it's, the first step I think is being willing to empathize. So sitting down and thinking about, okay, who is my customer, right? So if you want to start this with a specific person, me, I am your customer. So think about things that you've got to know about me just from right now, and create a customer persona based on me, right? What do you know about me? What problems might I face? How do I view the world? And it starts to get in your mind, okay, these are my customers. And then go other places where your potential audience is. Maybe it's pet forums. Maybe it's other sites that are already successfully doing what you want to do. Read the comments. Social media is... it's a place where you can waste a lot of time, but it's also an amazing tool for listening and for doing market research. And so, use hashtags or find places where these conversations are going on and just listen. Probably the most important thing you can do to learn about your customers is listen and provide opportunities for them to speak to you, and you'll start to get that picture of who they are and know what messages to give them. And then what's great about it is that as you start to build up this content, now you actually get to start to see how they react to your content and your messages, and that feedback loop now allows you to get better and better and better and grow and grow and grow. And if you just keep showing up every day, at a certain point in time, you've got that, we call it a minimum viable audience, or you've got what you need to, to really be powerful.
Yeah, and I'm looking at what Jane wrote, and I'll give you my take, and then I want to hear how you, in your world, come up with this. She's talking about content, and she says, my take is to start with tiny topics, not broad, sweeping, so it's not so overwhelming. When I'm with a pet, I think about what's happening there, and then what's funny, what's unique, what's annoying about the pet or pet sit. Sometimes a theme comes to me, a topic I can write about. Please give concrete examples of how you come up with an idea. What is your process? So first of all, Jane, what you're saying is exactly to the T what I tell pet sitters who come to me all the time and say, I don't know what to write about. I hear you say I got to write. I don't know what to write about. I always say, well, first of all, understand what you want to write about and need to write about and should write about is already up in your head. It's already there. You're not going to have to go to the library and do research and figure it out. You have it. You're already a living, working, breathing business owner, pet professional, pet care provider, pet sitter, dog walker. What is it? You already do it. So, Jane, you're on it. That's exactly what I do and what I say. I say, just be aware. Just be aware of your surroundings and your day-to-day actions and activities. Be aware of the dialogue you're having over and over with potential clients on the phone, with clients on the phone, with emails exchanges, with what happens if they get caught at the airport, how you scramble to do something about it. Write about that. So what you're saying is spot on, and it's exactly what I do and suggest and recommend. Jared, how do you, in your world, come up with content? How do you guys know what to write about?
It's an awesome question, and I love what Jane says here about start with tiny topics. I think one of the best tips, I don't even know who to credit this to, but is to write to one person. And literally sometimes if I'm stuck, I will say, dear so-and-so, to whoever it is. If I'm trying to simplify a topic, I might say, dear Heather, and so I'm just writing to my girlfriend, trying to simplify a topic. And it really helps you dial it in to just talking to that one person. In terms of the process, when we talk about idea curation, there's two different types. There's active and there's passive. And so when we're looking for specific articles, like specific topics to write, this is active idea creation because we have a problem we're trying to solve. And so what I look for are three things. You've either got quotes, you've got data, and you've got stories. And if you can go out and go out and look, read blogs, right? Go out and start consuming. And when you come across any quote, piece of data, or story that might be relevant, that's a post. And you just want to relate it to a person. So in terms of data, whether it's how much people spend on pet sitting a year, and you can, relate that back to a person, or maybe it's a story of, there's so many stories about people and their pets. There's an endless supply. And people love stories about pets. Like that's the one great thing about, I think, the content area where pet sitters are, is it is so easy to go from here to here when we're talking about pets. I mean, you just talk about dogs, and I'm already having an emotional reaction because I love dogs, from different experiences I've had. And so stories, even if it's just relaying a story that you heard from somebody else, whatever it is, but that's really that's the process. And you may not always have a specific idea for where this story, this piece of data, or this quote will fit in, but have a place to save them. And then if you're ever stuck, go back through that Rolodex of ideas, because something may spark that inspiration. And when you find that fit between the idea and the individual person or persona that you can write to, now you've got the post that you can write. And you can do that over and over. Beautiful.
Before we wrap it up, I do want to encourage...
Is that an hour already?
Yeah, but we'll talk for a few more minutes. I want to intro just a new topic before we officially wrap it up. I know these hours do go quick. I was going to say, before we do wrap it up, I want to encourage anybody joining us live right now to get your thoughts, questions, and comments in the chat log, and we could address them accordingly. Yeah. With that, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm thrilled to have Jared joining us in Vegas, in person, in October. I actually, last year, reached out to Copyblogger/Jared, and unfortunately, his schedule didn't permit. So we were then, win-win. We were lucky enough to get Beth Hayden on your Copyblogger team to join us in Vegas. But this year, I approached Jared and I said, you couldn't do last year. It's months in advance now. Can you do it? He, of course, said yes. We worked out the details. Everything is great. So can you give us a little preview of the topic that you will be speaking on in Vegas?
Yeah, I'll be talking about how to double your money playing No Limit Texas Hold'em. That's what you wanted me to talk about, right? No? I think what I'll be talking about is really an extension of what we talked about today, which is kind of that journey of visitors, readers, and audience members, and recognizing with the different pieces of content on your site where people are. And so to boil it down as simply as I can, we'll basically be talking about the difference between blog post pages and landing pages, and the different purposes of each one, certain specific copywriting tips and techniques, down to the nitty-gritty of writing headlines and using bullet points, some really specific things you can take away to literally make your next piece of content better as a blog post, right? And your blog posts, that is your opportunity to get people to know, like, and trust you. And your landing pages are your opportunity to get people to take that next step into that inner circle of belief of becoming your customer. And so, there's different ways that you want to approach each one. There's different ways that they work together. And when you understand them, it gives you a lot of power. And so, we've talked a lot of kind of big idea stuff today. What I really want to do with the presentation is give tools, tips, like stuff that you can put into your next blog post that'll make it better. And so I think it'll be a lot of fun, and it's stuff that I love talking about, so I can't wait.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about things like Jared said. You have the blog post, which of course are your articles, and then you have your, as we say, non-blog post or pages. Again, those are your services outline, your about page, your price list, your gallery, that sort of a thing. And how you get a visitor, remember now we're talking about getting them from a visitor to a reader to an audience, subscriber, fan, client. That's the journey. It doesn't happen by accident, right? There are very specific things when somebody gets to your website very quickly. They're going to decide by what they see at a glance whether they want to remain 3 to 5 or 7 seconds, or are they bouncing and going back to that search list or where they came from. So he's going to take us.
And let me caution real quick too, because sure. Sometimes when we talk about this and you talk about the specific ways to write a landing page, and you start to think, so here are kind of the underhanded sales tactics. No, this is how to take the person who's on your site, wherever they are, by the hand and lead them in the way that they want to be led and what they're ready for. It is, you're doing it with the person, you're not doing it to the person. And so I think it'll be very important to understand that that's kind of where we come from, and so that's, I'll be explaining it in those terms.
Right, and to take it back where I keep going, visit copyblogger.com and you'll see they're not, very salesy or in your face. It's you'll get it once you see what they're about and how they're about, and he's going to bring all that knowledge to us live in person. How can people get in touch with you and follow up and get in your world and say hello to you outside of here?
If anybody has questions, you can always email me at jared@copyblogger.com. That's easy. You can also follow me on Twitter at Jared Morris, or Google. The Google Plus is whatever the Google Plus URL is, plus Jared Morris. So those are the best ways, and I'm always happy to talk about any of this stuff, point you in the right direction for links, or just listen to your story. I love it all.
Excellent, and I love what you do, and obviously I'm a fan myself, so I couldn't be happier to have you join us. Give us a final piece of a nugget or something. You guys live and breathe, obviously, in this content world. Where is it going?
Boy, that's a great question. I think, I think what's interesting in terms of where it's going is what's not going away, and that goes back to email. And we've stressed it a lot, and we stress it a lot on Copyblogger. You always hear about the demise of email and the next big thing, and social media is going to take it over. Well, still to this day, nothing converts better than email. And so I think what's more important than where it's going is to understand the things that never go away. Email is the most intimate online touch point. That's never going away. Fundamentals of communication, how to craft a persuasive argument, fundamentals of copywriting, those things are never going away. Same thing with search engines, the basic ways to communicate with a search engine. Not game a search engine, communicate with a search engine. Whatever Google changes, that will never go away. And so what we teach at Copyblogger are the fundamentals that never go away, so that no matter where things go, you're fine, and you can adjust and move right on with it, because you're doing the right things. The fundamentals are in place.
And what's amazing about this entire hour we spent together is you just said Google, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, Google exists. We never said the word SEO or search engine optimization, did we, yet?
No.
That is everything this is. But how come we didn't say it? Go ahead.
Because if you think in terms of audience optimization, then everything else will take care of itself. Now, are there specific fundamentals to put in place for that? Sure, but you learn those when you look at it from an audience perspective. Because remember, part of your audience is out there on search engines with problems that they're Googling. So part of optimizing for that audience is optimizing your content for discovery and putting those things into place. But always look at it from the audience perspective first, not the search engine perspective. And again, when you do that, so much of it just takes care of itself. And there's a few tweaks and a few things over here that will help you, but this is the more important part. Focus on the audience, do that part first, and so much of the rest of it just takes care of itself.
I love that. I can't believe I'm just still blown away that throughout all this we didn't mention SEO, because it's the same coin, right? Just a different side, and a less observed side, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the search engines, in some senses, you can look at a search engine just as another audience member, and so just like you wouldn't try and game a real person, because that might lead to a short-term gain, but it's a huge long-term sacrifice and trust, the same thing goes with a search engine. So there's simple ways to communicate with a person, there's simple ways to communicate with a search engine, and once you learn those fundamentals, those are what you need to know.
Yep. I'll wrap it up with this, going off of what you just said. Think of the search engine like a person. I've spoken on that very sort of angle and outlook, that Google, when you do a Google search for anything, whether it's a pet sitter or I'm looking to buy a new pair of shoes, Google is going to deliver on that first page very expensive, so to say, real estate in Google's eyes. They are taking those 10 results, and that is Google's personal recommendation. Mm-hmm. So Google is on the line. They're saying, okay, you're looking for the best pet sitter in Seattle, or you're looking for the best shoe store in your area, or you're looking for a good pair of sneakers, here is what we as Google are telling you are the best of the best. And guess what? It better be right, or else we are not going to go back to Google. So you have to almost look at Google like a person. I like that analogy.
Yeah,
Thank you for pointing it out like that. All right, so with that, say hello to Jared any way you can. Send him an email. Look him up on Facebook, on Google+, on Twitter, everywhere he is. PetSittingLive.com is your destination for conference registration. I'll be there. Jared, of course, will be there. A whole host of other people will be there. As always, I want to thank everybody for spending the time with us. We will keep the conversation going online, whatever format you like. I will find you, you find me. We keep the dialogue going. Please be kind to each other. Life is too short. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you later.